All right, so we're diving deep into the world of Cadbury. You've given us quite a mix of sources on this one. We've got their Wikipedia page, some stuff from the company's own website, even a glimpse into their early marketing. It's pretty clear you want to go beyond just like knowing what a crunchy is, right?
Yeah, it seems like you're looking for the full story. Like, who are these Cadbury people? What were their big wins? Maybe even some of those family secrets.
You know, the good stuff.
Exactly. And you've definitely given us the ingredients for a really interesting deep dive. We've got the historical stuff, their whole evolution of marketing, even some insights into their social impact. So much to explore here.
Our mission, if we choose to accept it, is to sift through all of this mountain of chocolate information, and bring you the tastiest bits. You know, give you all the good stuff.
By the end of this, you'll be dropping Cadbury trivia like it's hot cocoa.
All right, so let's kick things off with their origin story.
Okay, so picture this. It's 1824, Birmingham, England. We meet John Cadbury, a man with a dream, a little grocery shop, and probably a killer hot chocolate recipe.
Oh, I can almost smell it now.
It's incredible to think it all started with a simple grocery shop. Not exactly where you'd picture like a global chocolate empire emerging from, right?
Not really.
hmm
But amongst the everyday groceries, he was selling cocoa and drinking chocolate, the essentials.
Right. But it was his sons, Richard and George, who really saw the potential in chocolate. They took over the business in 1861 and decided to go all in on chocolate. They even adopted this new Dutch invention to make pure cocoa.
Wait, the Dutch cocoa press.
Yeah. Not exactly a household name these days, but back then it was revolutionary. They could remove a bunch of the cocoa butter, which, fun fact, people weren't huge fans of at the time.
Too rich, maybe.
Maybe, but the result was a much smoother, richer drinking chocolate.
Ah, now we're talking.
Imagine how game-changing that must have been in the 19th century. Plus, these guys, they were marketing geniuses too. Their cocoa essence was all about being absolutely pure, therefore best. It was perfect for that whole Victorian-era health craze.
Oh yeah, they totally tapped into the zeitgeist. But here's what I find really interesting. That whole emphasis on purity. It wasn't just some clever marketing ploy. It actually came from the Cadbury family's Quaker
Oh,
values.
that's right. They had these strong beliefs in honesty and social responsibility, and they baked that right into the company from the get-go. And that actually sets the stage for what becomes this really unique approach to business. Like, we see this play out in a big way a little later on.
Okay, so their chocolate is selling like crazy, business is booming, and then they do something totally unexpected. They decide to pick up and move their whole factory.
You're probably thinking, why leave when things are going so well, right?
Exactly.
Well, this is where George Cadbury's idealism really shines through. He was deeply troubled by the poverty and terrible living conditions in industrial Birmingham at the time.
It was pretty grim back then.
Oh, absolutely. So he had this radical idea. He believed that better living conditions for workers would actually lead to better products and a better society as a whole.
That's a pretty revolutionary concept for the late 1800s.
It really was. And it wasn't just talk. In 1879, they packed up and moved to the countryside, establishing this whole new factory and village called Bourneville.
Now, this wasn't just a change of scenery, right?
No, not at all. This was a full-blown social experiment. George envisioned this village with high-quality housing, parks, places for recreation, even a school. Like a little chocolate-powered utopia.
They really went all in on this idea.
They did, and they didn't stop there. Cadbury offered things like pensions, employee savings schemes, and even, get this, introduced the Saturday half-day off, like practically unheard of back then.
Wow, so ahead of their time.
Right. It really makes you question some of those common assumptions about industrial capitalism, doesn't it? Like, were the Cadbury brothers just these exceptionally benevolent guys, or were they onto something bigger? It's that blend of business smarts and social conscience that makes their story so fascinating.
Absolutely. And speaking of being ahead of their time, they were a company of firsts. In 1875, they become the first to manufacture chocolate Easter eggs.
Basically, inventing the modern tradition as we know it.
It's wild how they shape those cultural traditions.
Right,
It
yeah.
just shows you the power of chocolate, right? It's more than just a tasty treat. It's about those memories, those experiences, even traditions that have stuck with us for generations.
Oh, for sure. And then, in 1905, comes the big one, the launch of dairy milk.
Ah, that creamy, delicious, iconic chocolate bar.
The story goes that the name actually came from a suggestion by a customer's daughter. Can you believe that?
No way. That's amazing.
It's a pretty good origin story, and it clearly worked. It quickly became the UK's best-selling chocolate bar. Their whole slogan, glass and a half of full cream milk in every bar, was a huge hit.
They were hitting all the right notes.
Definitely. And their growth didn't stop there. In 1919, they merged with Fry's, bringing all those beloved treats like Fry's chocolate cream and Turkish Delight under the Cadbury umbrella.
They were building a real confectionery empire.
Oh, yeah. They weren't afraid to strategically expand their reach, and it clearly paid off. But we've also got this source that digs into their early 20th century marketing, specifically focusing on their female employees.
Now, this is where we get a little peek behind the curtain of their carefully crafted image. These women were called Cadbury's Angels. They were always pictured in these pristine white uniforms, representing purity and hygiene.
Right, and it's interesting because it makes you wonder. The source focuses a lot on these women hand decorating the chocolates. But we know women were also operating machinery in other departments. So was this a genuine reflection of their work environment? Or were they playing into those Victorian notions of femininity to create a certain image for the brand?
That's a good question. It definitely makes you think about the intentions behind those marketing choices.
It adds this whole other layer of complexity to their story, doesn't it? And that's what makes exploring Cadbury so fascinating. They weren't just a chocolate company. They were reflecting and in some ways shaping the social and cultural trends of their time.
Okay, let's fast forward to the 21st century for a minute. We can't talk about Cadbury without mentioning the iconic gorilla ad from 2007. I mean, who could forget that?
Seriously, a gorilla playing Phil Collins on the drums. Pure genius.
It was brilliant.
It really marked a shift for the brand, you know? They went from absolutely pure, therefore best, to a gorilla rocking out on the drums. Talk about an evolution. It perfectly captures their embrace of humor and those feel-good vibes.
Definitely. They've really mastered that. But there's still so much more to their story.
Oh, absolutely. We've only just scratched the surface of this chocolate empire.
All right, so we left off with Cadbury riding this wave of success, a global confectionery giant. But things got a little bit, well, complicated in the 21st century, did they?
They did, and sometimes those complications, those challenges, they reveal more than just a company's business decisions. They kind of expose this really complex relationship between a brand and its, loyal consumers.
Right, because it's not just about numbers and profits at that point, is it? It's about the emotions, the memories that people have tied to a brand like Cadbury. I mean, think about those purple wrappers.
Yeah, those wrappers. They're instantly recognizable.
They represent childhood memories, family traditions, maybe even a first love for some people. Okay, maybe not a first love, but
Yeah,
you get the idea.
I get it. So when Cadbury was acquired by Mondelez International back in 2010, it wasn't just a business deal, right? It was this huge shakeup. I mean, for a lot of people, it felt like a change to their own lives.
People were worried, weren't they? Worried they were going to lose that special something, that magic that made Cadbury, well, Cadbury.
Exactly. And I mean, those fears weren't totally unfounded. There were recipe tweaks, packaging redesigns, even changes to the manufacturing process. Some people felt like the heart of Cadbury was being messed with.
Yeah, I remember some people were really upset about the recipe changes.
It's crazy how something like, I don't know, changing the size of a chocolate bar can trigger such a huge reaction.
Remember that whole shrinkflation thing?
Oh yeah, those bars got a little bit smaller, but the price stayed the same. People definitely noticed.
It shows you how deeply people connect with these brands, doesn't it? Like they have a stake in it. But beyond that whole public perception thing, Cadbury also faced some pretty serious challenges, like that salmonella outbreak back in 2006. That was a big deal.
Oh, a huge blow. It led to a massive product recall and this mad scramble to regain public trust.
Food safety is, well, non-negotiable for any food company, obviously. But for a brand like Cadbury, with their reputation and their history, a misstep like that.
You really have to go above and beyond to rebuild confidence.
And then there were those debates about halal certification and the use of palm oil.
Right, and those touch on ethical and environmental concerns, adding these, well, even more complicated layers to Cadbury's image.
It really highlights that tightrope walk that a lot of these global companies have to do, doesn't it?
Totally. They're operating in a world with so many different values, different priorities. It seems like every decision has the potential to alienate some part of their customer base. It's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, no easy answers. It's like, despite their best intentions and, their history of social responsibility, Cadbury found themselves navigating a much more complex world than, the world their founders operated in.
Definitely. But hey, let's not dwell on the negative stuff. Cadbury also took some really positive steps during this period.
Like opening Cadbury World back in 1990. That was a stroke of genius.
It was.
Wait, you mean that chocolate theme park? Where you can, like,
Wow.
swim in a river of melted dairy milk?
Okay, maybe not a river of chocolate.
Uh-huh. Too bad.
But it does give people this amazing behind-the-scenes look at how they make their chocolate. It's a whole experience, not just a boring factory tour.
It's like they took their production line and turned it into a full-blown tourist attraction.
And they were masters at that, turning their process into something people want to see, want to be a part of.
And they didn't stop innovating either. They've launched so many new products, new variations on dairy milk, completely new creations, even a vegan dairy milk bar in 2021.
They understand that to stay relevant, they have to appeal to both those die-hard nostalgic fans who want that classic taste, and also the new generation of chocolate lovers who are always looking for the next big thing.
It's a tough balancing act. It's like trying to please your grandparents and your younger siblings all at the same time.
It really is. But through all of it, all the challenges, the controversies, even the change in ownership, Cadbury has managed to hold onto their status as a global brand and that incredibly loyal fan base.
Which brings us to a really important question for you, the listener. What does all of this mean? What have we learned by digging into Cadbury's story?
I think the big takeaway here is that even the brands we love, the ones that feel like a part of our lives, they're actually these really complex entities operating in a world that's constantly changing. And their stories, they're intertwined with these huge social, political, and economic realities that we can't ignore.
So the next time you unwrap a Cadbury bar, it's not just a simple chocolate bar anymore, right?
No, it's not. It's a product with this long, intricate history, full of innovation, generosity, and yeah, even some controversy.
It's about understanding that there's more to it than meets the eye.
Exactly. And that awareness, that ability to engage with all those complexities, that's what makes you an informed consumer.
Before we wrap up this part, there's one more thing I think we need to talk about. Cadbury is this global brand, but their connection to the UK is undeniable.
Oh, absolutely. Cadbury is practically synonymous with British identity. I mean, their products are staples in UK households, and their marketing often plays on that British culture, that British humor.
But that Britishness, that strong tie to the UK, it's also caused some tension, especially as the world becomes more globalized.
Right, and as national identities continue to evolve, it's a fascinating paradox. They're this huge global brand, fiercely proud of their British roots, yet they have to operate in a world where those borders are becoming more and more blurred.
It's a tough spot to be in. And that tension, that push and pull, it's something we're going to explore even further in our final part.
Oh yeah, things are about to get really interesting.
We're going to take a deep dive into the future of Cadbury, looking at all those challenges of balancing legacy with the demands of a rapidly changing world. All right, so we're in the final stretch of our Cadbury deep dive. We've come a long way. From a little grocery shop in Birmingham to this global chocolate empire. We've seen the highs, the lows, all those sweet and, sometimes slightly bitter moments along the way.
It's been quite the journey, but now it feels like we're at a crossroads. What does the future hold for a brand like Cadbury? A brand so tied to tradition, yet facing all these huge changes of the 21st century.
It's a question on a lot of people's minds, that's for sure, especially if you're like a Cadbury shareholder or something. But how do we even begin to answer that? Where do we even look?
Well, I think there are a few key things to consider, like consumer trends, they're always changing. Then you've got those sustainability concerns, they're getting louder and louder. Technology's transforming everything. And of course, we can't forget about geopolitics, right? All those global events.
Okay, yeah. There's a lot to unpack. It's like a whole chocolate box of factors.
It really is.
So let's tackle them one by one. Starting with consumer trends. What are people craving these days? Is it still all about that creamy, classic dairy milk, or are tastes changing?
The classics will always have their fans, but there's definitely a shift happening. People are becoming more, discerning, I guess, more aware of what they're putting into their bodies. Transparency, ethical sourcing, those aren't just buzzwords anymore, they're demands.
So it's not just about how the chocolate tastes, but about how it makes you feel, like knowing where it came from, how it was produced, that kind of thing.
Right. It's that whole idea of conscious consumption. Would you enjoy that chocolate bar as much if you knew it contributed to, deforestation or unfair labor practices?
I see what you mean.
People care about that stuff now. They're voting with their wallets, supporting brands that align with their values.
Which brings us to that whole sustainability issue. It's kind of a giant cocoa-flavored elephant in the room, isn't it?
It really is a huge challenge for the whole chocolate industry. I mean, we all know that cocoa farming, especially in West Africa, has all these issues: deforestation, poverty among the farmers, loss of biodiversity, and solving those problems, it's not a one-person job. Everyone's got to step up.
Sounds like a recipe that needs a whole lot of collaboration and commitment.
Yeah, for sure. And to be fair, Cadbury has taken some steps in the right direction, like their Cocoa Life program. It's all about improving the lives of cocoa farmers and promoting sustainable practices.
Okay, so that's a good sign.
Mm.
But the scale of the issue is so massive, right?
It's a huge undertaking. It's going to require, well, constant innovation, collaboration between all these different players, companies, governments, NGOs, and some serious investment to really make a difference. It's about creating a truly sustainable cocoa supply chain from top to bottom.
So we've talked about the ethical stuff, the environmental side of things. But what about the chocolate itself? Are there any new trends in flavors, textures, or even like how we're buying our chocolate these days?
Oh, yeah, definitely. We're seeing dark chocolate becoming more and more popular. People are really starting to appreciate those complex flavors and the health benefits that come with it.
I've definitely been seeing more dark chocolate options at the store lately.
And there's also a growing demand for premium chocolate. You know, those artisanal creations that use unique ingredients and techniques.
It's like chocolate's going through this gourmet phase, kind of like what happened with coffee and craft beer.
Exactly. And that gives Cadbury a chance to, branch out a bit, to go beyond just that classic milk chocolate and appeal to those more sophisticated palates. But we can't forget about technology either. I mean, it's changing everything.
Yeah, besides just those targeted ads that seem to know exactly when I'm craving a crunchy.
Oh, yeah, those are creepy. Right.
A little bit.
But no, I'm talking about even bigger changes, like precision agriculture. That's helping farmers optimize their cocoa yields and lessen their impact on the environment. And then there's 3D printing.
Wait, 3D printing for chocolate.
Yeah, it's actually a thing. It could totally revolutionize how chocolate is designed and even personalized.
So you're telling me I could one day design my own Cadbury bar with, like, my name on it?
It might not be that far off. And of course, we can't forget about online shopping either. Companies like Cadbury, they have to create those seamless digital experiences that complement their physical stores.
It's all about meeting the customer where they are, right? Whether they're browsing the supermarket aisle or scrolling through their phone late at night.
Exactly. And speaking of phones, social media is another huge game changer.
Oh, for sure.
It's like the perfect tool for building that brand loyalty, engaging with customers, even launching new products. Remember that whole Cadbury creme egg goo hunt they did a few years back?
Oh, yeah, where they hid those golden creme eggs and people were going crazy trying to find them.
Yeah. It was brilliant. Cadbury really tapped into that power of social media to create buzz, excitement, and a sense of community around their brand.
Okay, so we've covered ethical sourcing, sustainability, changing tastes, and technology transforming everything. But there's one last piece of the puzzle: geopolitics.
Right. We can't ignore the impact of world events, things like global pandemics, political instability, economic ups and downs. All of that can disrupt everything, from supply chains to consumer behavior. It can even reshape entire industries.
It's a lot for a company like Cadbury to keep up with, especially when they're operating in over 50 countries.
They have to be agile, adaptable, and really have their finger on the pulse of what's happening in all those local markets. They've got to be ready to react to those unexpected events, anticipate those potential disruptions, and make decisions that align with their, long-term goals and values.
Sounds like a pretty intense game of chess, with chocolate as the pieces.
You could say that. But looking back at their history, their 200-year history, they've managed to navigate all that complexity pretty well, wouldn't you say?
They've had their stumbles for sure. But they've also shown this willingness to evolve, to learn from their mistakes, and to really jump on those new opportunities. That's what makes their story so interesting, I think.
I agree. So after all of this, after all this deep diving, what's the verdict? What does the future hold for Cadbury?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is, but I think they're definitely in a good position to thrive in this crazy 21st century. But it's not going to be easy. They need to keep innovating, keep pushing those boundaries. They need to put ethical sourcing and sustainability front and center. And they need to find those genuine ways to connect with their customers, to keep building that loyalty.
It's a lot to juggle.
It is. But let's be honest, the world would be a much less delicious place without Cadbury.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. We've covered so much ground, from their humble beginnings to those trailblazing innovations, all the bumps along the road, and all those exciting possibilities that are still out there.
Yeah, it's been a real treat. And I hope you, the listener, have enjoyed this journey as much as we have. But more importantly, I hope this has sparked your curiosity, made you think a little deeper about the brands that are a part of your life.
Because now, when you unwrap that Cadbury bar, you're not just enjoying a piece of chocolate. You're experiencing a product with this rich, intricate history. A history full of triumphs, challenges, and maybe even a few secrets still waiting to be uncovered.
That's the power of knowledge, isn't it? It gives us this whole new understanding of the world and all the things we often take for granted.
And sometimes it leads us to chocolate. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, happy exploring.